Okay, we should be live.
Looks like we're live.
Like I said, I've written down all these questions that we have that's been coming up over the last 10 days on average. And so we are definitely going to answer those. The other thing I wanted to mention is that any new comments we'll try to get to. We will be doing super chats first. Then the other thing I was going to mention is we will be talking about the mirror handwriting, because I know everybody's chomping at the bit to find out about the mirror. The therapist notes of Amber's. I will be giving you a snapshot of Johnny Depp's handwriting, his personality. I will be talking about Evan Rachel Wood, who I didn't even know who that was until this morning. Meghan Markle, I'll be mentioning that. The JonBenet Ramsey case, I'll be mentioning my thoughts on that. And then we'll just, at the end of our session, I will go back in and add the links to everything that we mention or talk about, so that if you watch us on replay, the links will be there. If you think your taste buds are wet now, just wait. But there are worse addictions out there. So this is a healthy addiction, so it's okay. Okay, so mostly everybody here is new to me. So, and I know if they're new to me, they're probably new to you too. So Dawn, if you don't mind giving some background of yourself, that would be great. And then we'll all know what you're the guru for.
Sure, and I want to tell everybody I have people out here on Clubhouse also listening in to this conversation, and I want to let everybody know that Clubhouse is going to be audio only, so I won't be taking questions on Clubhouse. If you want to ask questions, please go to mozelletv.com. That's MOZELLE TV.com, where you can join in and ask questions there. Throughout the show, I will check to see if there's any related questions out there on Clubhouse. But if you do want to join in, please go to mozelletv.com. And to get started, I am Dawn McCarty. I'm the CEO of Securing Everything, and I am a cybersecurity professional that focuses on how to keep safe at home. So I make cyber simple so that you can use the internet safely, so the internet does not use you. And I am also a forensic document examiner and a forensic handwriting expert, along with Mozelle. In fact, she has taught me a lot of what I know about the science of handwriting itself. And we've worked together for a long time on different cases, internationally even. So this has been a long time coming, I think, for us to team up and kind of review some of these things that are going on in the world right now.
So I started off as a correctional officer, and then I went into 14 years of college, and ended up with degrees in criminal psych, criminology, ethics, and a certification in crime scene investigation. And then parallel to that, I ended up going into becoming a crisis therapist, and then I went into trauma. And so I worked with domestic violence, sexual assault. I really have always had a passion for cold cases. And so I work with two international nonprofits. One is a Cold Case Foundation, and one is Find Me Group. A lot of the people are really new here, so I think that it's important to lay out a couple facts, I think, that are important for the science as a whole. And I know it goes from, regular handwriting and also question document. And so I just wanted to say that going forward, keep in mind that 90% of handwriting analysis is done without reading the content. When we start looking at something that we're analyzing and we see a disruptive pattern, something that looks different than the rest of the sample, then we will go back and look at the words, because then what that does, it tells us like, okay, something's up with this particular phrase or this word. So that's how we work on some of the criminal stuff, or if we're looking for deceptions and lies, we're looking for patterns that are different than the rest of the sample. So that's the other 10% when we go back and look at the actual words that appears on. Handwriting is non-discriminatory. It doesn't tell us, contrary to popular belief, it does not tell us the age or gender, the ethnicity, religious preferences. It doesn't tell us anything like that. So it is non-discriminatory. Sometimes you can see if somebody has a health issue, but you can't really say, oh, this is an 85-year-old truck driver. I mean, you can't do that. The other thing is it is protected by federal law. The federal law looks at it as public information and public knowledge, like facial expressions and body language. So it is completely legal to have anybody you want analyzed. But again, the crossover in the line for that is to not have identifying information on that document.
Because I work in healthcare, I am a senior security engineer for a major healthcare organization. So another thing too is you don't want to have someone's handwriting analyzed that might contain medical information and that kind of thing as well. So just because that's a privacy violation, and that could get us in trouble as well as yourself when it comes to HIPAA laws. So you want to make sure none of that is included in the handwriting, and you might have to redact it if it is. We don't need that particular information.
Right, and that actually does happen a lot sometimes when I'm teaching law enforcement classes. I'll have a police officer bring in an active case, but that officer has had to redact some of the information. And then it's amazing what we can solve and the insight we can get. In fact, when detectives call me, I'll say, you know what, don't tell me anything. I don't want any heads up. I just want to know, basically, what is the one question you have that you want to know? So
Right.
That is my rule when they call me.
That's a good rule, because we don't want to know the end result of what someone wants the case to turn out to be. We want to come to that conclusion and have that confirmation, because that's stronger.
Exactly, because we are not on the side of defense or prosecution. We are literally justice oriented. So wherever the science takes us is what we are. So there's been a couple times, like in the Michael Jackson case, I had his defense attorney team contact me, and I did the profile and I said, look, I think he's guilty. And so there is situations like that where I'm just because the defense hires me, I'm not going to just automatically go to the defense. And just because the prosecutor hires me, I'm not just going to go agree with them. And I'm assuming that's the way it is with you, right, Dawn?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay. I know some people are dying to know about the mirror writing. And so I did not. Did you watch any of the trial, Dawn? Because I didn't see any of it.
I watched only bits and pieces, only because that was on when I came into the room. So I saw some of it, and a lot of it I had to mute because I was working and I had other things going on. But I watch facial expressions anyway. So it didn't matter if I had the volume on. I was looking at what someone's face was saying. And I wrote down the times of that particular segment so that I could go back and find out, okay, I want to watch this part. And I was able to glean some kind of interesting information off of just watching the facial expressions.
Well, I feel like I've watched the whole entire trial based on the comments on my channel. So do you want to tell us what your process is when you looked at the mirror and what your conclusion is? Like, give us the juicy information that we're all dying to know.
So for me, in my opinion, and that's the beauty of what we do, is this is my opinion, and we may have differing opinions, and that's okay, because we see things, we have a different perspective. Maybe it's the sample that we have. We may have an original where someone else may only have a copy, that kind of stuff. So it totally depends on the material that we're given and what we're looking at when we base our opinion. The opposing examiners may have a completely different set of documentation that they're looking at. So, for example, with the mirror, in my opinion, I believe that Johnny did write the black marking. It's called, they refer to it as the black paint on the mirror. And he has testified that, yes, he did write that particular part. When Amber was cross-examined, they asked her if she wrote the part in red. And there's two sets of red. So if you look at it, and some say there's a combination of he wrote in blood, and there is some sections on there that very well may have been written in blood because of the way it's smeared, and there's a little bit of pool on the bottom of that particular section of the heart. So if you're looking at it, that might be the one and only place that blood may appear in the sample. But the red pieces that we're talking about looks like bright red lipstick or paint or whatever was used. So that's definitely a different set of handwriting than what the black handwriting is, the black paint. So in my opinion, two separate people wrote that information on the mirror. Now, is it Amber's handwriting? She denied it in her cross-examination. She said, no, I did not write that. But when I look at some of her journal entries, I see some characteristics in some of the single letters that are the same in the mirror. And I think she did write it. Well, and I do have little video clips. I could share my screen and show you why I think it, if we want to get into that. Otherwise, I can post those pictures and photos later.
That would be cool.
Either
Yeah,
way.
show us what you want to show us.
And then I'll share my screen. And I want this video here. Okay, so don't play though, stop. Okay, I'm going to show you a small clip of how I analyze. I got to get back to Restream though. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now, and I want to share this one. All right, so here's my little video clip of the main character out of these two samples, the journal sample. So this red letter here is from the mirror, and this Y letter here is from her journal. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this, let you guys see what I did. So I put the lines on there, and then I kind of hover over and I show you how that's pretty much a match. Those are strokes, and it's a significant stroke in this particular letter because of the way the Y stem is arched. They're identical in both of these samples. So this is probably one of the biggest reasons why I think Amber may have wrote this, as well as some of these other letters that are in here. Let me show you this. So when you look at these, the word tell here, and it's got the two L's together. And then we've got the mirror sample. So we have in here, we have the TE and we have the two L's here. They're pretty, I mean, they're similar enough to say, yes, I think that the same person could have, but it's not something that I would say 99% sure. But this Y is definitely a characteristic of Amber's handwriting. So that's why my opinion is I do believe that she did write this red section. Johnny wrote the black paint, and I think probably added some, and I don't know who added what, but there's different layers to this. So you can tell that there's two different S's up here, and then there's a bigger S that's written over that. This is covering up something. So I think the initial writing on the mirror was done in the blood. You can see how it's pooled here. This is, this could be indicative of what someone using blood to write on the mirror. And you can see how it's thicker down here at the bottom because blood will naturally pool to the bottom. And then it was written over in whatever substance this is. They refer to it as black paint. So this is over that particular sample, right? And then on top of that, the red writing is on top of the black paint. So there's layers here. And that's part of what we have to do is we have to kind of determine, well, what started this handwriting? What's the first layer? Kind of like Photoshop when you have all these different layers to kind of pull apart and find out what was done first, what was done last. So in my opinion, this handwriting here was not written at the same time. It's also pretty much what we call adolescent writing, where it's all the same size. There's no higher or lowers. And I've heard other document examiners say, this is not hers because she's got the highs and the lows in her handwriting, but she also has samples that are just like this, like that card that has the number 23 in Mozelle's video where she actually analyzed all of her handwriting. If you've seen that, that will show you that's indicative of this type of handwriting. So that is where my opinion is coming in. So what do you think of that?
That was awesome. So Annie just asked who took the photo. I wonder who did take that photo.
Amber took one, and then Ben took the last photo. But I did not show you that photo. I showed you the one that Amber took.
No, that was awesome. I mean, this, I don't like question doc. I mean, I can do it. I just don't like it. I like
Yeah.
personality. It's so much more juicy.
For everybody that's on Clubhouse, sorry that you kind of have to use your imagination trying to picture what I was showing on the screen, but this is being recorded on YouTube. So I will make sure that I will add that link into the Clubhouse meeting later so that you can come and watch the video, or you can join us now if you go to www.mozelletv.com. And there's also a way you can ask questions there where we can actually see it on the screen. So if you're in Clubhouse, thank you for being here, but come join us on YouTube if you want to engage and ask questions.
So I know we have so much more coming up because we're going to talk about the therapy notes. I'm going to give Johnny Depp's personality snapshot that I did and a couple more. This is fun, right?
Yeah, I can't wait till we dig into the therapy notes.
Right? Oh God, I can't wait either. Now y'all know why I spent 35 years of my life in this. Like well, actually 45 if we go back to childhood when I started learning. But it's addicting. You can't say no. It's just an addiction. So one of the questions that we got was how we got started in this field and if our kids actually do it as well. So do you want to take that one, Dawn, and answer first?
It was interesting because my whole thing started when I was a stay-at-home mom when my sons were born for 6 years, and I had left the workplace before Windows came out, so we were still in DOS. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because it does how I got here. So when I decided to go back to work, I had to figure out what the heck is mouse? What is all this stuff? And I ended up putting myself through school. So now I'm supporting my two sons as a single parent, and we have the crash where Microsoft tanked and everybody was losing jobs and people were laid off and I couldn't get back into the job that I had. And oh my gosh. And I'm like, man, I need to have something way more reliable than this computer business. This stuff is, I can't support my kids on this. So what can I do? And I started thinking, well, crime never goes away. So I ended up putting myself through school. I ended up with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice victimology and a master's degree in criminal justice management. So that's where I started getting into the justice side of things, which I really liked. And I started working on forensic document examination. And that's when I met Mozelle and I started following her on handwriting. And this was before we didn't really know each other. We had one instance where we met up out of the blue. It was like an impromptu meeting, like, hi. And we had lunch. And from then on, that was history. But I had studied handwriting before that. And then when I started talking and working with you, I started doing some of the law enforcement trainings that you had and teaching sheriff departments. And we did some international cases together. We've worked on cold case files, that kind of stuff. But when I started really digging into your handwriting book, I ended up throwing away my other ones. They were informational, but they weren't what we really needed to do a thorough analysis. So I stuck with just your book at that point. And then we just kept in touch and kept working together through, on and off throughout the years. I don't do the forensic work, the handwriting work full time. So I had to decide, am I going to keep that corporate job and raise my kids? So it's something that I do whenever there's an opportunity to do it, then I jump in and I help out, and I do that. My sons have learned how to do it. In fact, anytime I render an opinion before I send it to you, I've let them look at it and say, okay, I want to know what your opinion is. I don't tell them my opinion, but they'll come up, and every single time they've gotten the same opinion that I've gotten.
That's good. Well, my son just turned 30, my baby. And when he was 10, I would do the same exact thing. I would have this case, question documents, and I would take it over to him. And I'm like, okay, you look at this and I'm doing my part. You see if you can figure this out. And every single time he matched mine perfectly. My daughter can do it too. She's more of the personality side. My son does the personality too. So they both can do it. But I think what's missing is the confidence. My first lesson was my 11th birthday. And so I had a lot of childhood trauma and I had a lot of bullies. And so for me, it was a way of trying to understand people who in my childhood mind were mistreating me. So it was easy for me to understand them at a different level than what I was seeing. And so I was just very driven and I was very hyper focused. So I just kind of stayed in that field for forever, really. But when I was old enough, I tutored really closely with the man who taught me. And then when he passed away of cancer, I was 22, and he basically gave me all of his business. And so I kind of walked into the industry. My purpose with this channel is to educate in a realistic point of view, and not try to cluster it with a bunch of scientific stuff that's just going to, or advanced knowledge that's just going to challenge people. Somebody asked if left-handed writing is harder to analyze. What do you think, Dawn?
It doesn't matter if you wrote with your toes. People do write with their toes, and it's your personality, guys. It's your hand is getting signals from your brain, and your brain has that personality, right? It's not, your personality is not in your hand. So the brain is sending those signals down your arm to your hand, and you're writing what your personality is. And that's why we can tell that's my mom's handwriting. That's my son's handwriting. That's why we can identify who wrote something that we know personally, because it's their personality really that you're seeing. It's just in the form of letters and, on a piece of paper. So it really doesn't matter. I've seen people that write with their mouth. They write, maybe they don't have arms, so they write with their toes, and they figure out ways to still be able to communicate, and it's still their personality. There's still characteristics and traits that are identical. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It is fascinating, and some of you may have heard before that it's really called brain writing, and that's really true. I mean, the brain is communicating to us, but it's using the pen and the ink flow to do it. So that's kind of the easiest way to understand that. I am very big on pens. I not just the kinesthetics, but to have people write, and then like somebody mentions like the left hand smearing and stuff. So my favorite pens to avoid some of that left hand smearing are actually right here. It's the Pentel Energels are my favorites. I like the way it feels. It's the 0.07, and it's also, they don't smear with the left-handed writers, and so I really love those pens. So another question was, did we use our handwriting skills in dating and love? Did you?
You can use handwriting in dating and love. In fact, we've received samples from people asking me, what do you think about this person? I personally would never date somebody without seeing their handwriting. So, yeah.
Okay, well, so let me tell you exactly how important this is. So when I was young, I said, I am never going to use my skill personally. I'm never going to analyze a date, because he's not going to find out that much information that quickly about me. So I felt like I had an unfair advantage. And if it was important, he should tell me anyway. But I did with this one. So we're still together now, 13 years. Somebody asked us to give an opinion on if we think that Johnny Depp was lucky to get out of the relationship with Amber alive. What do you think, Dawn?
Okay, so this is getting pretty heavy here on this, because we've all seen and heard, well, most of us have seen and heard a lot of the testimony, and there's a lot of bias that goes into what we're seeing and what we're hearing because of who we know and who we don't know, right? Who we see on the screen, who is a better actor, what's our favorite movie. So we have to remove all these biases before you can really determine who's more dangerous. And in the handwriting, before you even watching any of these things, there's definitely characteristics in the handwriting. Now, Johnny has handwriting that has characteristics of being controlling, aggressive, and maybe some anger ticks here and there, some off the wall, kind of sporadic, but it's also artsy. So it might look bad, but he is an actor, so there's different types of things you have to take in consideration. And the same goes for Amber too. So Johnny's handwriting has been somewhat consistent. But one thing I can say about Amber's handwriting is it's consistently inconsistent. There's
Yes.
from one sample to another. I mean, did the same person write this? So there's a lot of things in Amber's handwriting that sends red flags up for me. And I'm not saying that I think that she is a brute, aggressive type of person, but she can be the aggressor. That's my opinion.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I looked at the handwriting and I was like, okay, I realize that some of this is stylized and I realize that some of it's this or that. But when you put it all together, you realize what people are capable of. And so this is what it's kind of like I did a mini video the other day where it talked about if you have a bunch of puzzle pieces, you don't know what it looks like. But if you have part of the puzzle, you get a really good picture of what somebody is capable of. And that is, in my opinion, is she capable of really bringing harm to somebody? Sure. She does have those. Is it something that she would probably plan to do? I don't know that she would plan it. I feel like it would be an emotional impulse. There's treatment, but there's not a cure. And if you're not going to the treatment and you're not going to do the work, then anybody is at your mercy. Because keep in mind that it's not just Johnny who's a victim of her diagnoses. It's also her that's a victim of her own diagnoses, because it's hard to live with those types of symptoms. And so it really comes down to symptom management, and there are some good programs for that.
Especially if you don't know or you're not aware yet. Sometimes we don't know that we're suffering from something like that. So, and I don't know much about the diagnoses other than what I heard that she was diagnosed with from her therapist. I don't know her past. I don't know if these are trauma responses because of childhood trauma. I don't know where it stems from, but a lot of her reactions is based off of, she's reacting because of something. And that usually is inner work that she needs to do in order to, level that out for herself. So that again is hard to work. You have to acknowledge it and you have to accept it and you have to do the work.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that I used to work with a lot of people who were struggling with depression, and they would get on their antidepressants and feel great, and then stop taking them because they felt great.
Because I feel
and
great.
Then wonder and then wonder why they're back in depression. So it's a lot of self-awareness and a lot of insight is required on that, and it needs to be something that you want to do, because nobody can force somebody to go to treatment if they don't want to. It doesn't matter. It's not going to work. One thing I did see that I did not put on my video was I saw on her capital I that it looks like she had been violated. She has some indicators of sexual mistreatment from a male. I don't know who. It doesn't, handwriting doesn't tell us who. It just shows us the indicators. So that is one thing that, right, we don't know when, we don't know any of that. But it is something that I did see on there on her capital I, but I didn't get into it because the capital I is the only letter in the entire alphabet that represents the writer. And there was so much information in that one letter that if I would have brought up that, then I would have had to go through a whole hour long, at least, class on capital I's. Yeah. And I just couldn't. It's a rabbit hole. This whole industry is a rabbit hole. And so I have to be very careful with how advanced I get into the videos, because I don't want to confuse the heck out of everybody. So I think that she has a lot of trauma in her past, and a lot of the times the borderline comes, most of the time I would say the borderline comes from that type of trauma. And so being able to get her treatment, I would hope that that's the one positive that may come out of this, especially since she is a mother.
Yeah. I think at this point, I think it's best that they just wash their hands right now and walk away. They don't have children together. What's done is done. Trying to rehash and go through this again is just re-traumatizing to herself, even if she's going to try and re-argue this thing, because now there's all this other information. All of this information is circulating all over the internet, and opinions are flying all over the internet as well. So right. I think it's just best, if I were to advise her, if she even cared to listen to me, I would say, cut your losses and just go be happy. Find yourself, heal, just focus on you. And I'm saying that out of love because I've had to do that. I had to find myself, heal myself from my own childhood traumas so that I could be the best me I could possibly be right now. And I can do the work that I do so much better because I've reconciled that. So I think it's in anybody's best interest to find that kind of resolve out of all of this and turn it into something positive at this point. I get people say, well, I don't want to write in front of you. And it's like, you can write in front of me and it's not like I'm going to be able to tell your life secrets. So it's not like I'm going to look over your shoulder today and know everything about you. It would take time and effort. And that's why we ask for as many known documents as possible so that we can really get an idea of, and we want to have more than just one sentence. For example, there's a document examiner out there that analyzed the therapist notes. So can we transition into the therapist notes?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, let's go. Because man, so there's one sentence that I can find out of the therapist notes that is on a black and white image. The text is in white. So they stated that based on the example that they used, that was the different type of styled handwriting, that it couldn't possibly be Amber faking the notes of her therapist because the handwriting is completely different. Well, again, that depends on what sample you use. So yeah, she might have that high stems up above and those low stems below, where like the F's and the G's and the Y's, all of those are usually pretty flamboyant, I guess, for a lower level stroke or characteristic. So if you look at those, in fact, I have videos on those too. Let me open one up here.
Yay.
Let me find, let's see, let's do.
Well, you find that, I'm going to answer a couple questions. Yeah, Annie, trauma can change your handwriting for sure. And if you do go, somebody else asked if you go through changes, if you can see it in the handwriting, and if you do a self-improvement, yes, you can. You will be able to see that the self-improvement in there as well. Okay.
I see that someone says that I keep freezing. Am I freezing? Uh-oh, we lost Mozelle.
I took myself off for a minute to have the screen.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share, and I'm going to show you guys what sample I used to determine if the therapist's handwriting samples are Amber's or not. So on the left side, I have Amber's handwriting. On the right side, I have the white text that is said to be the therapist's, taken out of the therapist's journal or handwriting. So when I play this is how I determine whether or not I think it's the same person or not the same person. So I'm going to play it, and you can see how I come to the conclusion that I come to. So watch this. Again, if you're on Clubhouse, we're showing it's a video that I'm showing out here on MozelleTV.com. If you want to see what we're doing and be able to comment in the comment section, please join us there. Otherwise, I'll be done showing this video in just a second. But what it's showing here is that the spacing, the strokes, the size, and all of the lead into the next letter is literally, it's very similar. So in fact, it can be written by the same person. So again, I'm going to show you one more time how you can see the red lines are showing you the angle, the slant of the lettering, which is identical, right? And if you look at the H, another document examiner says that the H is not tall enough, so it could not possibly be Amber's. But when you look at it like this, the stem of the H, the hoop, and the hump of the H all align. The only difference is it did not go as high. When someone is trying to disguise their handwriting, they're going to do things like that intentionally. So you have to come up with it's similar at least, but you cannot rule it out that it is not the same person, because this particular sample is definitely similar and very close to the same strokes, slants, and characteristics. So let me, I'm going to pull up another one real quick. Let's see, let's go. I showed you the Y, and here's the block stroke. So here is, this is the letter E. So it's a H-E, and this is the exit stroke. And as I line that up to the E exit stroke on her known handwriting sample, you can see the E is about the same oval shape. It's just a little taller on the one in the back, but the stroke, the exit stroke is nearly the same until someone takes that up on Amber, embellishes her exit stroke a little bit more. And on the one on the right, it actually stops. Let me show you that one more time. So you can see how those align. And we're just looking at the E in this particular sample, but I show the other letter to show you the slant is still the same. The distance between the letters is still the same. And the exit stroke is still the same. So they look different by just looking at it by eye, but it's actually the same. Everything is the same when you're looking at the handwriting. And then let me show you the number 2. This is a similar one. I'm going to take this. This is exit stroke, which I usually call the block stroke. Now, Mozelle might have a different name for it, but it's usually when you're guarding yourself. These are 2 different types of strokes, but you can tell that, again, the distance between the letters, the garlands, which is the connections between each letter, and the exit stroke going up and over the top is literally the same. Let me show you that one more time. Let's watch that go over, and we'll align that real quick. And you can see, like, nothing is ever going to be exactly identical in handwriting. You can probably tell that in your handwriting. You can be in a great mood in the morning. 2 hours later, someone cut you off on the way to work, and now you're angry and your handwriting sucks the rest of the day. So we all have that kind of stuff, but you can see that these are definitely close enough. So let me unshare my screen. Okay. So Mozelle, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I was just trying to give you some more space to not have me on there. So
oh, you might be on mute. Oh, no worries. So yeah, I mean, I think it is definitely possible based on the one sentence. So I don't have enough to really go on, and I would never say 100% that all of the therapist notes were faked because I haven't seen them. But off of that one little sentence, I can say that they're definitely identical. And it would make me curious enough to want to see more. Because I'm definitely curious to know if that many characters are similar, then there's probably more. You can tell that if you're, like I said, if you're disguising your handwriting, which if I'm trying to create this fake journal or these fake notes, I'm going to try and disguise my handwriting. That's 101, right? We're going to disguise it, but she cannot. She literally cannot disguise it enough. All she can do is shorten those loops. She can try and change those exit strokes, and she can only do it for about 7 seconds before her own personality traits start sneaking back in unconsciously, because you're only holding on to that conscious effort for a little bit of time before your brain starts canceling that thought out as you're writing, and your own personality comes right back in.
Right. That's 100% true. Somebody mentioned if you're writing quickly, would that not change the stroke?
So quickly, I mean, it could change it a little bit, but not enough to rule it out. So yeah, you might have a shorter exit stroke. You might have a longer exit stroke, but the shape, the style, and the distance is still going to be the same. Because I'm going to put lines all over your letters, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try to disguise it. I'm going to measure between things. I'm going to look at your garlands, which is the loops at the bottom, or the well, you know, like Christmas garland. It's kind of draped like that.
Right.
That like not a U, but that's your communication stroke, right? And so I'm going to be able to see those, and I'm going to be able to tell the distance between the exit of the last letter and the entrance point of the new letter. And it doesn't matter what's in between. It doesn't matter if you change that, because I can still line up everything else. You saw in those videos how it didn't matter if she didn't take that E stroke all the way out, like her known sample. That exit stroke on that therapist note lined up perfectly, except for that last little bit.
So another question that popped up is, so that writing quickly could change the height, etc., so it can't be ruled out as hers, right?
it's not going to be ruled out as hers, because we can still see slants in characteristics. There's characteristics that you wouldn't even realize that you're doing that we can detect.
Right.
We can tell where your loops are that are not, you don't even really think, where does that F really, that loop in your F connect? How far up and down the stem? How common is that top stem? Not, how often does it not connect to it? So we're looking at those kinds of things, those traits.
Well, and I think the other thing is that, what happens is when one of the first things that I was taught when I was, growing up in this industry about the question document part was, when people are trying to forge somebody else's writing, they go by what it looks like. They're not realizing they have pen stops where there's little dots where they've paused, or they have little places where they've picked up the pen and put it back down that you necessarily can't see with the naked eye, but you can see it when you put it under a microscope, or in, nowadays there's programs. But it's those little things that, that's the difference between, if you're talking about forensic handwriting versus like somebody who's a hobbyist. Those of us who do the more forensic detailed stuff are going to pick things up that somebody who just checked out a library book can't pick up. That's where the difference is between book learning and mentorship. Because if you, like that Amber Heard video, there's no way I could have done that video, or any of the other ones on there actually, without having a mentor. I could not have gotten that good with just books. I don't care if I'd have had 100 books. The books are really good for getting your, getting informational, I guess. What would you say, Dawn? How did you word that? Like,
it was informational, and it was like, well, the other books that I referred to was they're a mile wide and an inch deep. They didn't go deep enough into, like in the way you trained me was you were going an inch, a mile deep and only an inch wide. So it was completely different. So, and I see someone made a comment here about, let me see, the way therapists write their notes. So I can imagine a therapist writing with maybe some shorthand, their own technique, script type handwriting, using acronyms. It's not going to be necessarily coherent. Like the average person may not be able to pick up those notes and say, oh yeah, okay, it says verbatim word for word, which is what the journal notes appear to be, which is not indicative of a therapist's note.
Right. So when I was a therapist and a clinical director, I would put like SX for symptoms, DX for diagnose, BX for behavior. Like there are those little shortcuts, because we do have to write a lot, and some of them just type now. They don't even write notes. So so I'm not sure that the therapist would have all of these notes that are written out in long form. I think that that would be noticeable, that a typical therapist would have something in there that would indicate that they're a therapist in some kind of mental health position, or even a doctor. So there again, that's my opinion, but I don't. Well, I want your opinion on why doctors write so messy.
One is because they don't have time to write, so they don't put any thought into it at all. So that's why it's a scribble. Because they don't care if you know who they are. Because when you come to see them, they're only the doctor. They're not the person that goes home at night to a family, sits down at a dinner table. They're not showing you a personality. They're showing you a profession. So that is a little different there. And then when you look at the prescription pads, I think it's intentional that a doctor does not make that legible, because so many times have people use those things to be able to go out there and fill it in themselves and kind of mimic that handwriting. So it's probably a lot of it is intentional. So we really don't know what a doctor's handwriting really looks like unless we know them personally.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one of the other questions coming up, have you corrected your own handwriting when you saw something you didn't like?
Oh, of course. When you're going through and you're learning this stuff, you're going to have panic moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I put that trait in there. Oh, I'm terrible. I got to hide that. But that's not true. That's not true. So don't freak out because you have anger tics or control issues or whatever you're seeing in your handwriting, because what matters is if it's stacked. If I can take 5 or more in the same sample, not in separate samples, in the same sample. And it could be that maybe you were really, really pissed off when you wrote it, but you're not normally like that. So although those traits might appear, we all have them. And I know, Mozelle, you've said over and over again, first off, I'm going to tell you, we all have them. I've heard you say it over and over again.
Good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, we all have bad characteristic traits, which just means that there's a tendency. It doesn't mean that we would even act upon it. So don't freak out. don't freak out about it.
Well, and it's a lot of times people will say, you know, I looked at your video and I noticed I write that same thing, but I'm not like that. And it was like, no, it's not like that. It's what goes with it, what we put together with it. So that's, I just have to block this person who's trying to put a bunch of Tinder notes on here. So
yeah, I'm blocking someone too.
I'm trying to catch them.
You're not coming in here and sending business somewhere else. So your message is deleted.
Oh yeah, they're going
and
quick.
You're reported too.
Yeah, took care of that too. Somebody asked also, what does, or is there any means if someone writes both cursive and printing in the same word? So here's all these great things here. Spam bot in chat. Thank you very much for telling me. We're getting that. So printing, in my opinion, for the majority of people, printing and cursive mix is the healthiest way to write. It's also the quickest. So if you're looking for efficiency and flow, you're going to have a quicker result if you print right. So when you do half and half, it's saying, hey, I don't mind connecting to people, but I'm not giving up my independence. And so there's more to it than that, but that is the gist of it. But generally speaking, half print and half cursive is the healthiest way to write.
That's how I write. And I used to worry about that until you told me, no, that just, you're a quick thinker. And a lot of times we're just so fast in what we're doing daily that we're not concentrating on the communication piece. We're trying to get information out. So a lot of times that's what breaks up your handwriting. It's just the way your brain is thinking at the moment. And other times you might see that you do have those garlands connecting all your letters in cursive. So you're going to see a mixture of it. So who is this pinned at the bottom of our screen? Okay, good.
I don't know. I just was like, got to figure out how to remove this person. I just wanted to say, okie dokie, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. We love sharing our information, and we love educating and helping people with this incredible science. So I just wanted to let you know that you are noted, and thank you so much for that. We appreciate all of that. A question for you, Dawn, was Amber was trying to copy Johnny's writing. The question is, when you analyze her copying of his writing, will you pick up his or her personality traits?
It's never going to be his personality traits because her brain can't possibly do that. So it's always going to be her personality traits. However, it's going to be what we call disguised handwriting. So it might look like the characteristic that's there that might be something that she is pretending, and she's not thinking about it as I got to display this personality. She's thinking about it like, okay, the C's curve just like this at the top. She's looking at it artistically, not looking at it personality wise. So when you're copying someone's signature, you're trying to become an artist and try to copy exactly how they write. And again, we're going to be able to pick up, most of the time, we'll be able to pick up the differences between your disguised writing versus their actual authentic writing. So if, for example, on the mirror, there's confusion over who actually wrote that stuff. Was it all Johnny? Well, if I've showed you how there's layers on the mirror, right? And if there's writing over the top of Johnny's, why would he write over the top of his handwriting? He would move over because you can see there's all these sections that he has added. Now, all of a sudden, he's going to go back and read and just write over the top of what he already wrote. That's not characteristically normal when someone's trying to send a message. So it doesn't look like he wrote all of that handwriting. So that's up for debate. But another thing to think about is when you're writing on a piece of paper that's on your desk, it's different than writing on a dry erase board, a chalkboard, or a mirror like this, because you're in a different position. Your brain knows that you're using a different medium. So the characteristics may not be identical as it would be on a piece of paper, because that's a different position than you're normally used to writing.
A lot of questions were all about the reversed or mirrored writing that was in Amber's. Her N's and I guess her S's were backwards and different things like that. So I wanted to mention that it can be several things. It could be dyslexia, brain damage, attention seeking, creativity, perceptual confusion. I'm trying to think of what else it could be. But there could be several things.
We're dealing with artists, right?
Right. Common in kids too, and kids usually outgrow it.
Yes.
It's really common in stroke victims. I guess if I could see Amber's writing, just that's not trying to be stylized or faked or anything, just her regular writing on several documents going back a little bit, and to really look at that writing. And if it happened then, I would probably have her go see a doctor for a brain scan. Because that wouldn't be normal. But you can't really rule that anyway, because you don't know the context to which she was thinking when she's trying to write so stylized and so mimicky, as I had talked about in my video.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Do you know she wrote messages backwards to Johnny? Is that like a question that you're asking us if we know, or do you know that answer and asking us if we knew that? So yeah, that just clarify that a little bit. Again, we don't really pay attention to every single detail about what's been going on in the news, in the court, and the hearings, because our job is to look at the handwriting without necessarily knowing the context. I can look at handwriting upside down and still see the characteristics. I don't need to know what it actually says, because I can tell you if it's true or not by looking at the characteristics. I can tell if they're lying based on certain characteristics that might be in there. And also, like I was talking a little bit earlier about the body language and the micro expressions. So I study micro expressions, and watching Amber testify, she had a lot of eye flutters. She blinked a lot, which is indicative to the next thing she says is probably not true. She had to think about it really quick to maybe make something up or put two things together. Most of the time when that happens, that's the case. A lot of things that she does when she's answering a question, you will see, if you go back and watch her testimony, you're going to see the right side normal. You got to watch that left side of her face. The left side of your face in micro expressions is going to be the true feelings. And that's where contempt is shown. When I'm mad or something is going to happen on the left side, not on the right. So there'll be no shared expression. So if I'm smiling and I'm using both sides of my face, then that is a true emotion. But when it's quicker than a second and it's only on the left side, that is a sign of contempt or that anger, the nostril flares. So if I curl my nose like that, I'm probably saying, ooh, gross. But if I curl my nose and it's on the left side, it's probably anger or disgust. So there's a difference. So if you take someone's face and you split it down the middle, so someone's smiling. So let's say I smile on my right side, which I can't really do that. It's hard to make my right side go up, my left side go down. So, it's hard to control them is what I'm saying yourself. So if I'm smiling on my right side and you took a snapshot, what's my left side telling you? My left side is telling you that it's not as happy as my right side. So that's something to look at too. And you can see this in her as she's giving her testimony. And when she was talking to Savannah Guthrie, I hope I said her last name right. She had a very poised, and I think she was coached because of the way she was sitting, she was leaning forward. She had her hands, like in front of her. She wasn't using the hand gestures too much in that interview. Occasionally she did, where she came up with her hand gestures. but a lot of the responses would make her eye flutter, and she would also gulp and go down, which is a sign of embarrassment or
Shame.
shame, stuff like that. So she goes down, but she's also taking a gulp, and then she comes up and composes herself, and then she answers. So she's struggling really hard during that entire interview. And Savannah did a really good job at pointing out things and calling her out on some of the things to see what she would say. You know, and in the beginning, she started off with neutralizing Amber. So a good interview technique and skill is to make Amber feel comfortable to open up to her by telling her, you know, this is the way people, this is what happened, and we want to hear your side of the story, so that she feels like, okay, she's not going to attack me. And then when you start getting into it and she's just asking general questions, when Amber starts stepping on or making those particular movements, Savannah's picking up on that, and then she starts calling her out on it. So she was kind of pushing it without making her feel aggressive. But a lot of things Amber says too are in the same sentence a double negative, which means it's a positive. So really go back and watch that interview. It's a short interview, but if you look at it, watch her facial expressions, watch how she looks down, watch how she flutters her eyes. You know, those are all indications of maybe being dishonest or having to come up with something to say that she doesn't have, or she doesn't want to. She purses her lips a lot as well too, which means she's holding something back. So she doesn't want to say what's on the tip of her tongue. Yeah. She's going to think about it, flutter, come down, come up, take a gulp, and then give you an answer. That gives her 3 seconds to come up with a different idea.
Yep. And, she's talking about facial expressions, and I wanted to mention that facial expressions and body language also line up really well with handwriting. So she's talking, you'll hear experts talk about the left-hand side of that person's face or that body. It represents their past and memories and different things like that, referring to something that's already happened, and the right-hand side referring to something, coming up, upcoming, or thinking of something to say, or more imagination based versus reality. Yeah. And handwriting is the exact same way.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to put the myth to rest that because I look up and to the left or I look like this, that doesn't mean I'm lying. That is not true. Right. So when I'm looking, if you ask me a question and I don't have, I have to think about it. If I'm looking to my left, I'm looking at my past thinking, did I do that? How did that happen? I'm walking it through my head to figure out, how can I answer this question? If I look up, I don't know either side. I'm looking, I'm imagining, wow, I don't know how that would play out that way. If I'm looking to my right, again, that's that future. What does your future look like? What are you going to be doing for work tomorrow? I'm going to look to the right more than likely and think, well, I have to get up. I have to go here and go there, and I need to go to work, and I have to do this, this, and this. Because it hasn't happened, you have to imagine it. So just because we look one way or the other does not indicate that's somebody that is glued to you like this, and they're not taking their eyes off of you, and they're doing this the whole time. That makes me want to back up. So you don't want to have 100% eye contact. You want people looking around. It's okay for people to look around. Right. It's right. If you're looking at their body language, you're answering the question, they're biting their lip and they're looking to the left. Again, you're stacking characteristics of their body language. Right. It's the same thing in handwriting, like Mozelle was saying. You can't just take the eye movement to the left as being, you're lying to me. That's not that's not accurate. Right.
And Mike, the dad Crosby, I just want to say thank you so much. I know it's kind of sad that we're still discussing Amber and Johnny, but that's why we're trying to mix up a little bit of information in here and not just focus on them. But I really appreciate the bonus here, and glad that you're here to join us. And Well, hopefully we'll keep doing this, and we'll see you some more. Let's talk about the JonBenet Ramsey case. Did you ever look at that note?
It's been a long time, so I don't remember everything about it. So no, I don't think that I could speak to it. If I didn't know we were going to talk about it, I would have gone and refreshed. But I'll let you explain it. Maybe it'll remind me.
So, for whatever reason, I've never had an interest in that case. But I knew somebody. One of the PIs I work with a lot, the Ramsey family contacted him and asked him if I'd be willing to help with that case. So I was able to look at the note, but I didn't do it from a document examination perspective. I was really just interested in more of personality stuff. But lately, a cousin of mine, he is a graduate of the FBI Academy. He is a former firearms instructor and was an officer in charge for the police department's burglary and larceny department. So he's kind of focused on trying to solve that. And so he's kind of asked me for my help a little bit again. So I might be able to look at it again. I remember thinking back, because this was a long time ago. I remember my first thought was, I really believe that Patsy wrote it with her non-dominant hand. I don't know why, but that was the first thing that came to me. And I remember when I heard that she passed, I'm like, well, that was really convenient. And that was the only part I remember of the entire case, like just having those two thoughts.
I think I remember you telling me that was your opinion, because that seemed really familiar when you said that. So yeah, that's interesting. And so when someone does write with their non-dominant hand, it's going to look messy, but you're still going to have some of the same traits in there. So it could still be interesting.
Yeah. And so we'll see. Maybe I'll have to re-examine that again. Maybe we'll have another, who knows, another.
Yeah, let me dig into it a little bit, and I'll come back with some more video.
Yeah, it might be fun. Is there a case that sticks out to you? Like kind of still like you always remember?
Well, we've had some pretty gnarly cases.
Yeah.
Some of them were like, we don't want to visit again.
Sure.
Some of those international ones were. Let's see. I've actually been approached by someone who claimed that their father was the Zodiac.
The Zodiac. Me too.
And I've analyzed the handwriting, and it is very interesting. I'll say that. But because I cannot get my hands on originals, I will not give my 100% opinion out there publicly because, wow. It's very interesting. The samples that I did get are very similar. There's some definite characteristics that you could draw a line, you can match. Is it true? It's still yet to be determined. And here we are almost 10 years later that it still has not been, vetted. So who knows?
So I had that same person contact me, and I forwarded it because I'm like, you're the federal agent, you take this. So he said that yeah, exactly. He pulled up the composite and matched it to that person's father, and it was eerily the same. And my whole thing with composite sketches is usually they look like nobody or they look like everybody. But I haven't heard anything since, except that said that he tried to approach a specific police department about that, and he was shot down because this person's supposed suspect, right, her dad, was so high up in the government that they weren't going to touch it. That's all I heard of it, and that's been years now. Yeah,
I've had someone reach out to me. It was in 2020, and somebody that's been involved in the case has been really trying to investigate it, and it's still, I think it's still stagnant. I don't think that there's new evidence, so it's kind of in limbo. I don't know if it will ever be solved, and if it's someone high up, who knows? We're both in justice. We both are, justice warriors.
Yeah.
We don't want that person to go unpunished. But again, people you don't know what could happen.
So somebody had asked earlier about if you change your handwriting, will it change your personality? So back in 1987, I accidentally, it really was accidentally, created the clinical graphology program, which is now evidence-based. And it's super powerful, done from home. I also use it because I'm an ancient DNA researcher. So I also use it for clearing some of the inherited traumas. I believe that what's going on in the world today with all the anger and aggression and division and hatred has a lot to do with ancestral trauma resurfacing, and nobody knows what to do with it. So many people are pissed off, but they don't know why they're pissed off. And they don't know why because it's not theirs. And so Same thing with anxiety. People have come to me, they're like, I wasn't anxious until I turned 35. You just don't wake up anxious one day. There's something that happens. And if you can't identify the trigger of why you're anxious, it's probably not your anxiety. It's just that when your ancestors die with unresolved crap, they pass it through the DNA, through epigenetics, and you eventually, one of these generations is going to have to deal with it. And I think that's a lot of what's accumulating today in the world. And so clinical graphology is used as a basis to clear that out. It's clinicalgraphology.org. And you can see some of the research and different things that's on there. So it is possible. And that was in 1987 when I copyrighted that and that came up. And that, like I said, it was completely accidental. So
the first things you put me through was to do that. And I think I was coaching some other people that are going through it for you. I was kind of helping to guide them, like kind of being the lead for
mentor.
them to go through that process. I would grade them, and then I would let you know what was going on, and then you'd hand down the next assignment. So yeah, I mean, that was very, very interesting. And I can say that even today, I still tell people, if you want to change your personality through handwriting, start raising your T-bar up a little bit, because that will increase your confidence. And once you increase not all the way, you don't want it at the top. You want it close to the top, but not at the top. But that's the one thing I think that really makes a big impact. That's an excellent course.
That's why a lot of people go on to forensichandwritingstore.com, which is my store. They go on there, they're like, I want this comprehensive analysis because I want to know what the heck is all going on inside of me. It's a great insight. And then if people are going to therapy or contemplating maybe some traditional therapy, having that profile is super important, because you can give that to the therapist and streamline so much of the treatment program and save hundreds of hours potentially and thousands of dollars. But I do need to issue a warning. Be very careful with what you see online regarding handwriting or changing your handwriting, because you know how it is when you learn something and you have a little bit just to be dangerous. That is not just a cliche, that's true. You have to be very careful with the ethics involved, because if you're going to, go to, nothing against Reddit, but I'm going to use it as an example. If you go to Reddit and you hear somebody say, hey, do this and do that and do this with your handwriting, or you go, Facebook comment or Pinterest, it doesn't matter where you get it from. If you change that and that person that's telling you that has no mental health background and no specific training, it's like trusting your brain literally, and sometimes even literally your life, with somebody that you don't know. This is a super powerful science, and if it's used in the wrong way, it could really cause some damage.
Definitely something that you need to be very cautious about, how fast you change your handwriting. So if you want to look at something that is safe and effective, there is a link in here. Someone did ask for the link. It is in here. If you just scroll up a little bit, there you'll see the little yellow bar. It's clinicalgraphology.org. And then they're asking about, I've seen a couple of times that they want to know what we think about Johnny's handwriting.
Yeah, so I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. Let me give you Johnny's. I wrote it down here. Okay, so I just pulled a random sample of Johnny's. It was on Pop Topic's Twitter account. I've been hearing all along, seeing people say that, he has this beautiful handwriting and this so gorgeous handwriting. I've also been saying all along on some of these comments that Johnny is no angel. So based on that, and then based on Steele Books on Reddit, who put a printed sample of Johnny's writing up, I'll give you what I found. Johnny can be emotionally cold, tough to read and figure out, and way too serious. He has unresolved issues with a prominent woman in his childhood, petty and insensitive. Change can often cause him some inner stress. He can be gullible in love, lack perception. He's clever, realistic, resentful. He has a super quick mind. He can be difficult to get along with. He can be selfish, tricky, and he definitely, one thing that kept coming up in his writing is how much he hates interference in his life. He's fair and honest. He's direct. He's discreet. He can be shy. He has a retentive memory. He's loyal. He appreciates simplicity. He's diligent. He's curious. He's physically creative. He's open-minded, philosophically imaginative. He's cooperative, but he's most cooperative if he can set the rules, which means he's stubborn. And he's courageous, yet he's risky. And again, I think some of these traits is going to come out more when he's perhaps drinking versus when he's sober and different things like that. So you can see two tracks of him too. And like I said, everybody has good, bads, and uglies. Me, Dawn, we all have them.
What I see consistently in his handwriting is I think he tends to write very fast. So he's a very quick and sharp thinker. Most of his handwriting to me is displayed like that. He likes to write in all caps, which is indicative of really not showing who he really is. He's very reserved in his expressions when it comes to handwriting. So, and then when I look at his signature, there's a lot of times that his signature is, it is, it's his craft. That's your badge to the world, right? So he has a very significant signature that you could recognize even on a small thumbnail. You can say, oh, wow, that's Johnny's signature. Once you know it, you know it. So it's pretty consistent. There's times where it's pretty illegible for himself. So maybe that's when, maybe he's had a drink or two. I don't know. But a lot of times that is, his signature is very, you can identify it very quickly. When we sign our signature, it is not necessarily indicative of our personality handwriting. It's what we usually take the time to finesse our signature to make it pretty, and girls make it flowy and lots of loops and stuff like that, and men sometimes just like up and down, very short, quick, and done. They don't put a lot of thought into a signature, and that's a trait that usually means that they're not putting information into the signature. So his signature is not legible. If you were to just read it and say, oh yeah, that says Johnny Depp, it does not. It's almost like an image. It's like a drawing, or as he would say, a drawing.
Well, and just in general, like signatures only represent about 10% of your personality. It's like giving somebody a picture of a nose off of Google Images and saying, hey, describe the face. You can see the nose. Right. And then the other part of that is anybody who has a signature that can't be easily recognized as what it should say is self-protective in general anyway. And I wanted to mention, somebody else was asking about Meghan Markle. And I'm like, I don't even know who the hell this is. And I'm like, I really need to watch. She
married a prince.
No, I had no idea. So I decided I'd go on YouTube and see if I can figure out who Meghan Markle is. And it turns out that Sheila Lowe, another handwriting expert, did it already. So I don't have to recreate the wheel. So somebody also asked about sexual abuse in handwriting. And I did mention that one of the ways was the capital I, but I think it's too hard to get into in a situation like this. Sorry, too hard to get into a situation like it's so deep and in depth of a it's really an advanced class, and you can have a class on capital I's all by itself. And I do have a class that's on sexual abuse victims and sexual abuse perpetrators all by itself. There's two separate classes, but even when I teach that to law enforcement, they are advanced classes. And so it would do an injustice to you guys and to the science to try to get into that at this.
You need to have the prerequisite in there first. You need to understand the basics of strokes and the traits in handwriting so that you know what we're talking about in those advanced classes.
Somebody said, what if I suspect that someone in my family forged my mother's will? Can Dawn help solve that? Go ahead and take it, Dawn.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you that most of my cases involve families and wills. Almost every single one. If it's not a check, it's a will. So, and in fact, it's usually the will, and I get occasionally I'll get some checks, but family members are the ones that are most likely to forge a signature. So, for those of you that are worried about, thieves stealing your signature, it's really your family that you have to, and we teach that. We teach how to forge proof your signature and what is actually a public signature and your legal signature. Your legal signature should never be used in public. Not on credit card receipts, not on the little box at Walmart when you're signing your name in that little box thing. Don't use your normal signature in there. That's when scribbles come in handy, because if they need to verify who you are, the bank will call. So signatures are really important when you want to try and prevent a will from being altered. And sometimes it's not the signature that's altered. Sometimes it's who.
Right.
Just saying. It's really hard. So if you're going to have a will, use watermarks. That way, page 2 can't just be duplicated on someone's computer and printed off on their printer, which I can tell if you used a different printer, by the way. So if I have an Epson and I can even tell there's differences of paper types. So if I have laser print paper and you have OfficeJet or inkjet, I'm just saying, you cannot totally forge it without people finding out.
See, between Dawn and I, y'all can't get away with nothing.
But in reality, I'll give a little bit of some free coaching here. Just make sure that if you're going to have a will, that it is kept securely, cannot be altered without, however you want to set it up. It can be set up to where you have to have certain people present in order to change the will. You want to make sure that it's registered with the state, especially in later in life days when there's that moment where you're looking at living documents and how to proceed at this point. Do you trust your trustee? Do you know who's handling the estate? All of that information, because I've seen aunts rewrite the mom's will and write out her daughter leaving her $1, and the aunt got everything. Unless we can start prosecuting people that are forging, but right now it's not illegal to forge someone's signature. It depends on what it's written on. So a will is not a legal document. A will is not a legal document. So I can forge a will, and if I can get away with it, I can get away with it. If you call me out in court and you have a document examiner there, then we just say, okay, I'll settle. I'll just take this instead. But there's no prosecutor in that case. So unless the prosecutor will actually pick up and prosecute that forgery, there's nothing you can do about it. So that's why you have to protect yourself. You have to protect your signature from everything. And don't use your public-facing signature as your legal signature. So what you sign your bank documents with, your mortgage loan, all of that stuff, that's legal documentation. It needs to be completely different than what you sign on your credit card slip. And use watermarks on the web page, on the will pages itself. You can have these documents created and notarized. You can have each page notarized, and you can have each section initialed. So there's things that you can do to make sure that it's really difficult to just replace one page.
So you
should review your will every year.
Yes, and your life insurance too. Your beneficiaries, review these over and over and over. If you change something, look those up and make sure that it doesn't need changing, because you think that nothing's going to happen, but we all know we're not promised tomorrow. So Get on that and make sure. And the other thing I want to mention is with COVID, because my husband works in life insurance, a lot of life insurance policies were saying in there that they don't pay if somebody passes from a pandemic. So make sure that you look at your policies and see if there's a clause in there, because if somebody passes and it's from COVID related stuff and it has that in the policy, that life insurance policy does not have to pay. So it's those types of things that you just have to be really aware of. And until you really work in the legal part of it, you don't really think about it.
Yeah, it's not a joke when you think about your living documents. Those need to be updated constantly.
Does your handwriting change based on who we're writing to or the topic we're writing about? The answer to that is yes. There's a lot of internal environments that go on. There's a lot of external stimuli that goes on, and there's a lot of mitigating factors. And so it can change on that, but but we can still see that the only thing that hasn't changed is your brain.
Well, and what I tell people too is and this is how I describe it. It's your mood. Think about it as your mood. So you get up in the morning. I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, and you're in a great mood and you're like, man, my handwriting is just spot on. It's perfect today. And then you get in your car and you drive to work and someone cuts you off, they flip you off, they whatever. And now your adrenaline's running, you're pissed off, and you get into work and your handwriting you're constantly, correcting it or scribbling something out, because now you just can't communicate because your brain is caught up on that adrenaline rush, that anger piece has snuck in. So now what you're seeing in your handwriting is the effect of that. And your handwriting is affected because of our experiences throughout the day. So then someone may be coming, maybe they give you, you got a good review, or someone, complimented your dress. And now you're starting to get into a better mood. And then you see your handwriting improve again. This can all happen within 30 minutes. Yeah. Or it can take place in an entire day. So it's all based on your mood at the time of the writing.
But again, your brain is still going to show its imprint, and we're still going to get your personality. Yep. Somebody asked something about writing journals. And so if you write in a journal and you start leaning really far right, then you're feeling more emotional. If all of a sudden you start leaning left, you're actually pulling away, backing up from the emotion. So it's like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want anything to do with that. So you start to lean left. So it can change based on, again, your mood of how your slant is going. So there's, and everybody's so different that, it would be unethical for us to say everybody needs to write with a vertical slant, because that might not match the rest of your personality.
Well, one thing I want to add to that is, when you're writing in your journal, who are you writing to? You're literally writing to yourself. Mm-hmm. So your emotions may be more extreme in your journal because you're being more real with yourself, because your inhibitions are lowered, because you're not telling your secrets to somebody else. You're telling them to yourself. So your slants might be crazy. They might be so slanted right. And most of the time when your slant is to the right, it typically means you're very outgoing, maybe extroverted. When it's straight up and down, you could be an ambivert. And when it's slanted to the left, you're more of an introvert, typically. Then when you start adding who your audience is, if you're talking to someone that makes you mad and you have this left angle all of a sudden, that's because you're reserved. Like I was saying, I'm not saying nothing. So I'm keeping it to myself. And then that's that past, present, and future stuff too. So it all kind of goes together.
It does go together, and I'm telling you, you guys could learn. I mean, if you want to go into the rabbit hole and learn some of this, it is an absolutely fascinating science. And
I use it all the time.
I do too, and a lot of people are dating, and so a lot of times it's like, hey, like a lot of single moms come to me and they're saying, hey, I want to make sure this guy's not going to perp on my kids, because a lot of the child molesters will get close to women who have children of the age that they like. It's easy access, it's convenient. So a lot of single moms will do that and say, hey, I just want to make sure my kids will be safe. So, and and guys will do it because they want to make sure the girl's not a gold digger. Like, it works both ways. Yeah. Oh my
Property
God. Tenants
managers that want to rent
room.
to somebody. Yeah.
Exactly. I
Yep.
always told my property manager clients, I always said, look, it's a very thin line between landlord and slumlord, and it all depends on your
Yeah.
tenants. Because I was raised in that industry, and it was interesting. So, Leela Love, thank you so much for the tip, and I wanted to address your question. She said, my last name starts with an M. It's really hard for me to do it in a signature. Why is that? Also, the letter O after the L when I write it in cursive. Both of my names start with an M, so I just kind of print my M, and then I go into the rest of it. I kind of cursive the rest of it. For the most part, mine's kind of a mix, but my M stands alone by
Mine
itself.
too.
Yeah.
Don't force it to be connected. You don't have to have everything connected.
Don't let your signature stress you out, though.
Yeah.
Dawn, they want to know how they can, if you teach classes, and how best, I'm reading the question, how best you teach, and where they can find you, and what kind of classes you teach. So there's like a 3-part question in that one question.
I'll try and answer them all. So yes, I do teach classes right now. I have a Forge Proof Your Signature course, and I'm recreating a lot of my courses because they're outdated. Really, we're not, we don't really teach the same way. We're able to use the virtual world to train now. We don't have to do it in person. I don't have to lug a projector or chalk, make sure there's a dry erase board. I don't have to do all that anymore. So now it can be delivered virtually. Some of it can be delivered on demand, but I'm redoing a lot of my courses because of the way I include a story that makes it more of a personal, so you can relate to the reasons why I'm teaching you what I'm teaching you. And a lot of what I teach is, I'm in cybersecurity. So I literally teach you how to be safer at home without freaking you out with the word cybersecurity. You're learning it, but you just don't realize you're learning it because of the method that I use. So I'm using stories to help you relate to certain things. So you might do some things at work that you're required to do, and that's that's because of the way the cybersecurity is set up. But when you go home, you cannot relate your home network to your work network. It's impossible because you don't know how the corporate world is set up. A lot of that is private. First of all, they don't share that information with you. So when you're at home, what do you do then? So a lot of this stuff that I teach now is helping you to relate it to what you need and what what is going to stand out the most for you. So you can reach me. Right now, I'm fighting with GoDaddy. GoDaddy deleted my websites. So we're in a battle over that right now. But my normal website is bookdonmccarty.com. I'm working on getting that reestablished. But in the meantime, you can follow me on LinkedIn at I am Don McCarty, Facebook, I am Don McCarty. I'm on Twitter at Don McCarty. So it's either I am Don McCarty or Don McCarty. You can find me on almost any social media platform out there. Let's see, what other methods do I have of contact? Oh, definitely follow me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel that I'll be starting to post some of these, more of my videos out there that are informational, especially depending on the time of the month. Like June was National Internet Safety Awareness Month, which is focused on keeping children safe online. I teach a signature course on predator prevention. So to keep children safe out of the hands of groomers that are trying, the pedophiles that are out there. We have massive rings out there, human trafficking, child trafficking, all that. So I help parents build toolboxes so that they can protect their kids. It's the worst thing in the world to think that, my kid can help me set up my webcam because I don't know how to do it. But when I ask you the question, how do you protect your kids then? That means you really need to understand the internet and how to use it safely so that you can protect your children. So that's what that course is about, is giving you the tools you need so that you can have the conversations with your kids, even though they have technology in their brains. They're born with it these days. Where we have that parenting gap, we were born, we didn't have computers at home, and now we have to raise children that were born with computers at home. So follow my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Dawn McCarty. Should be simple to find, but make sure you're following me there, because that's where I'm going to be putting a lot of my content.
Thank you so much, Kim Nelson Designs. Appreciate that. She has a question. She said, I have severe ADD and I'm constantly changing my handwriting. I get bored with one style and change it. What does that mean?
Means you're bored with that style. You want to change it. Again, your signature is your badge to the world. So it doesn't really concern me that you're changing your signature. It's the mood at the time, what you're wanting to portray at the time. You know, things as we grow, our signature will change. It evolves with us in a lot of circumstances. Sometimes it doesn't, because we get so accustomed to one style. But it's okay to change that up, as long as it's not giving the wrong impression of yourself. That might be something you don't want to do. But a lot of times you can't really screw up your signature, because, like Mozelle said, it's only 10% really of your personality.
Well, I think, and she said handwriting, so I'm wondering if it's all handwriting as well. And so a lot of times what happens is, if you're an artist, it's really easy to do that. In fact, that's how clinical graphology, how I founded that, because I've always been artistic. I'm an abstract artist now. I was changing my handwriting just because I thought I was bored and being creative. And it turned out that certain letters felt better and certain letters made me feel worse. And so I started paying attention, and I'm this closet nerd. So I'm a research junkie. And so I started paying attention, was like, wait a minute, if all these make me feel good and all these make me feel shitty, why am I writing with the shitty ones at all? And so I started writing with the good ones, and that's how it happened. So I think possibly what's going on is that you haven't found the ones that make you feel really good and maybe authentically you. I think once you find that, you're going to be like, whoa, this feels really good. And this has boosted your maybe your design ability or your skills or whatever. And then you'll find one that you stay with. I think it's just a process of you're maybe not consciously connecting with the kinesthetics of it. So that's my guess right now.
That's a good point. And I'm sorry, I thought it was a signature question, but I want to also add to that is, when you're a teenager, how many times did we change our signature in high school? You know, when we had a crush on somebody, so we all of a sudden got really flowery with our handwriting, with lots of hearts and kisses and whatever all over the place. We do have a tendency to change our handwriting based on what's going on around us. So like she was saying, when you change your handwriting, is your mood, is it making you feel bad? Does it make you feel better when you're changing it? Pay attention to that for sure. But we do change our handwriting as we go. Sometimes it's not really conscious. So I want to ask Kim, are you consciously changing your handwriting? And then again, you might want to talk to Mozelle a little bit more about the graphology, because you want to be careful what you're changing, because you might change a personality that's a good trait, and if you change it too much, you might take that trait away from yourself.
Somebody asked which books we recommend, and there are some people, for a lot of ethical reasons, that I would not recommend. I don't want to be sued, so I'm not going to say their names, but I will post when we're done with all the links. I'll put them in the bottom. All the links to all the books I do recommend. Keep in mind that learning from a book is not the same as learning from a mentor. It's very, very different. Although if you're just getting started, books are great, but I would not recommend like getting 12 of them at once. Pick like one and get involved with one, and then kind of get some good foundational practice, and then start using that stuff in that book, and start analyzing people who maybe like your friends, your classmates, your family, and get some people who are going to give you honest feedback. Then get another book, because you might find there's different things in that book that just are compatible with what you've already learned. But don't go all in and all of a sudden you're surrounded by so much information you don't know what to do with it. So I think, is that fair, Dawn, to say?
Yeah. And like she said, you got to really look at the book. And Mozelle also has books. I know she didn't say it, but I'll say it for her. She has some books that you can look at as well.
I'll put them in there. And the other thing is too, is that with Amazon's Look Inside, that helps you a lot. So you can be able to see kind of what that author's teaching style is and see if it's in line with your learning style. I think that's important as well. But like I said, it's a good starting point. Just, make sure that you be ethical when you use it. One of my pet peeves is that people will start learning a little bit and then add like psychic stuff to it. Please do not clutter the science with psychic stuff. Please do not do that. I have no problem with psychics. I have friends that are psychics, cool, whatever. But please don't mix them together, because this truly is science. And the reason it looks bad to a lot of the United States specifically is because somebody back in the 1800s did a very bad thing. He was a palm reader, and he tricked the handwriting analyst into publishing a book. And the handwriting analyst said, it's not the same as what you do. And the guy was crooked and did it anyway. And the handwriting expert was really upset. But in the 1800s, you can't fly around the world really and tell everybody. So he did what he could before he passed away. But please don't mix in other non-sciences or other things, because it's hard to clean up the reputation that this has because of that being done.
So when Mozelle and I work together, there's oftentimes that she will work on the personality side and I will work on the authentication side, the document side, to authenticate who actually authored the document. And we do that specifically because in a court of law, when you're trying to tell if who signed it, did this person sign it or did somebody else sign it? You cannot bring personality into that. So we have to be really careful just in those areas so that we are not enmeshing the science either. So there's the personality trait side, and then there's the court document examination side that we keep separate. So it is definitely important to not bring in that other element. And sometimes, those are fun. People love to have tarot cards reading or their palms read. And, it's entertainment. It's good. It's fun, but muddy up the waters when it comes to the science of handwriting, because we are using that brain activity. We're not using just personality.
Well, and that brings me to a question. The last two questions we have is, somebody says, why do so many people not believe it's a science? And I think I touched on that a bit, but I think the other reason is because this is a science where you don't have to, either on Dawn's side of question document or on mine of personality, you don't have to interview or any way engage in the people that you're analyzing. And I think that's hard for people to wrap their mind around. But at the same time, people also believe in DNA tests, and you don't have to interview those people either. So, and then the second part of that question is, why don't you just prove to people that this is a real science? And my answer to that is, I don't bother wasting my energy trying to prove something to somebody who already has their mind made up. There are people who don't believe in God. There are people who don't believe in DNA evidence. There are people who don't believe the earth is round or flat. There are people who don't believe in lie detector tests, and there are people who don't believe in fingerprinting. There are probably people who don't believe there is a sun and a moon. So my point is that I am not going to waste my energy on trying to convince somebody of something that they don't want to believe in. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and that's theirs. And I'm cool. There's plenty of room for all of us.
Right. And people don't have to come to us for this kind of information. But on top of that, we have the Gestalt, we have the ASTM standard that we use, which requires us to follow standards and protocols that are in place in order to come up with an opinion to be an expert witness in a court of law. So we are guided by those standards.
Okay, so I had one other surprise snapshot I'll give you. A bunch of people were asking about this Evan Rachel Wood, this Marilyn Manson person. I think it's alamy.com, alamy.com. I found a handwriting sample, and hers says she likes to acquire things, can be secretively selfish, likes to be in control, talkative and a good public speaker, can be defiant, doesn't keep secrets well, can be extravagant, which could lead to mismanaged funds. Her self-image is important to her. She can get along with mostly anyone while keeping nearly everyone at a safe distance. So she's always guarded and lives on the edge, which basically means risky lifestyle.
So there's a certain element too when you're around, it could be just in the environment you're around. Those tendencies could appear more than they might if you were hanging around people, your family, or maybe people from church. But considering who she's hanging around with or has been hanging around with, there is some darkness in that, and it's intentional. It's not like, we know who Marilyn Manson is. Not that he's a good or bad. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a little bit of darkness around that personality. So, of course, it's going to rub off on people that are surrounding him. So it could affect her handwriting is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because a lot of people in codependent, for example, relationships, like possibly even with Johnny and Amber, you feed off of each other's negative parts. Like you just feed off each other. You know each other's buttons. You know what to push. You know what's going to push somebody over the edge. And you don't get anywhere. You know, your handwriting can change on that because you're in that mindset at that time. Somebody asked if we've ever done Hitler's handwriting. I have. Have you?
I haven't.
Okay. I've done his signature, and I use it in my suicide class, actually. And you can see how his signature, when he first gets like in office, let's say, to the end time, you can see his signatures completely disintegrate into literally nothing. And that's when supposedly he, was suicidal and killed himself. So, but yes, I have. And that's interesting. His will, I haven't seen that. Somebody asked about health in handwriting. So health in handwriting is a definite thing for sure. And I know the bare minimum, and I wish I'd have paid attention back when I was learning, but I was young and healthy and I didn't think I had a need to. Yep. And I have a really good friend that is her forte, but she's amazing. And she looks at your handwriting, and there's a lot of times when people have health conditions that their doctors can't find. And the thing is that your body knows it's sick before it gives you symptoms. It already knows that. I found my dad's cancer about 6 years before the doctors did. I basically told my mom, look, your heart's getting worse and worse and worse. Urged her to go to the doctor, and she wouldn't do it. A couple of days later, she was taken to ER with a heart attack, and she had no history of heart stuff. So, I mean, it's real. So if you have questions about your handwriting and your health, I would specifically direct you to my friend Karen, and her phone number, and she doesn't care because it's her business phone number, is 505-242-6176. And I will actually post that in the comments, in the description after we're done. And tell her that I referred you so that you get the red carpet treatment. She is amazing. As far as if you want to learn to document, she teaches that too. Karen does. I don't know. Do you teach that, Dawn?
I haven't been, but I do know of other people that do it. In fact, Kathy Copenhaver, I think, is still teaching Monday nights, and it's a small membership fee. So that's another one that she strictly does just document examination. And she's a certified, court certified examiner. So she's my go-to.
Yeah. And Karen is as well, and she's in court almost every week. If as far as face reading, if you want to learn face reading, I'm sure Dawn could teach you some stuff, but my favorite instructor is Christian Chua. I'll post his link as well. He's very good. And then for you guys, as a special thank you for hanging out with us for a while and asking amazing questions and just getting all involved and being patient with us and all that, I put together a freebie page on my website, which is forensology.com, which I'll also put in the link. And you don't have to sign up. You don't have to register. You don't have to do anything. Just go on the page and click download. I put 5 or 6 things up there, and then I'll be adding more later. I'm hoping that we get to do more of these because this was fun. This was a really long one. I don't think they'll all be this long going forward, but we had a lot of stuff to cover. So if you guys would like to see more of this, just give us some ideas for topics, and hopefully we can get together and do this more consistently. Never, ever, ever write your goals in pencil because your brain will not consider it as something permanent. So never do goals in pencil. Okay, I think that's it, right? I think we covered it.
Check my brain.
So anyway, we love you guys. Thank you so much. If you have more questions, you can contact us. I'll post everything, all the links we talked about in the description below, so you can come back and watch it, get those links. Yeah, I mean,
don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can be kept informed, and hit that alert button. So when I start posting courses and stuff, you'll be notified.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thanks for being here. Yep.